Welcome to the Noodle Podcast. We are Kate and Max, and we love noodling on what we've learned by accident. This podcast is a space where we share how we get the best out of ourselves and the people we've worked with. In today's episode, we look at how the way we think affects our perspective and relationships with colleagues and team members, and what we need to watch out for so that we generate a positive, inclusive and collaborative team environment. Hello.
Hello.
Kate.
Morning, Max. How are you doing?
Doing all right, thank you. Yes. And you, how are you today?
I'm okay, yeah. I think we're both doing a bit of post-COVID gravelly voices, if that's what we need to explain.
Yes.
And
Sound a little bit deeper than normal.
which is interesting because we're talking about a slightly deep topic
Yes.
of bias.
Small topic then. Let's see if we can fit this into 15 minutes. Where should we start?
Yeah, let's just fix it. Let's fix unconscious bias.
Well, talk about fixing then. So what have we done in the past about bias, unconscious bias?
For years, we have been running unconscious bias workshops as part of our suite of things we do to help people have a better time at work, be their best selves, get the best out of each other. And what we know, big revelation, is that unconscious bias workshops don't work. Actually,
Not
we
just
always
ours.
do that. No,
I'm saying, just being clear. Yeah, we're rubbish. No.
ours were great.
Yeah.
And there were definitely
fun.
light bulb moments. There was fun in there.
Yeah.
We were really conscious to allow people to say the unsayable.
Yeah.
So there's,
There were some memorable moments.
Definitely. And we've done them with all sorts of different businesses and industries and people, some of whom had never heard of the term unconscious bias before.
Right.
Some people were quite resistant to whether it exists. And you can imagine which side of the bar those people were. Why don't they work?
I think it's like starting something and then no follow through is the issue.
Yeah.
It's all right to raise people's awareness at an individual level, but if there's then systemic patterns of process, policy, procedure that just keep reinforcing the old way or not challenging the biases, then you're undermining the effort that you put in with the individuals going on the training.
Yes. Lots of people would say to us, well, I'm very aware of where my biases are and I catch them and I try not to let that affect how I interact with people. But I don't see my bosses doing that. I don't see anyone else doing that. People keep on recruiting the same sorts of people over and over again, and they tend to look and sound a certain way. And then we would talk to managers who would say, I'm trying really hard to recruit more women or younger people or people from different backgrounds, and I can't find them. They're not interested in our jobs. And then you have to go, so what's going on in your world that makes it unattractive to those people? You're asking for quite a lot of trust and bravery to be the first woman in the IT team or black person in the customer service department, where typically you've got a lot of, white young men as investment bankers going out and doing their thing.
So it's that first bit, isn't it, about are you advertising in a way that makes it look open? Are you recruiting in a way that allows anybody to be able to come in through that recruitment process? And are you aware that you might be colluding with other people if there's a group of you looking after a recruitment process? Yes.
We've struggled sometimes, didn't we, to get people to really believe that anything could or should be different. And just how hard it is, and this has been proven over and over again, for people who are in a minority group and they have to prove themselves over and over more. And the language, the metaphors that are used about them in performance reviews, or why didn't you get this job? I recruited a lovely woman who's still a friend who was from Kenya via Australia. And she said she had got to the stage before I'd recruited her of changing her name on her CV to a more Western sounding name. And that was the way. I hadn't got one of those CVs, gotta say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was her experience. And again, the data shows people with a Western sounding name in, Western or even global companies are 4 times more likely to get an interview than those with a harder to pronounce name. That really annoys me. Just read it and say it.
Ask them.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you say that so that I don't get it wrong? Because,
So should we go back to why does bias, if people don't know, why does bias happen?
Well, yes. So we all want to connect with other I'm at risk of saying we all like cakes. So I'm assuming that most people in the world would like to be connected with another human being and feel safe and feel that you could trust the other person, that you feel you belong.
Yes, you're part of a group that gets you. Yes. You don't want to feel like you're on the outside of the cave and everybody else is inside around the fire. That's kind of where it comes from, isn't it?
Yeah. So that sense of belonging is something that we're all striving for. And the danger is that in doing that, we are seeking to find the connections with people in order to achieve that feeling of belonging. And we end up creating a tribe that's very like me.
Yes. And then you miss the benefits of having a diverse perspective, which is often really good for problem solving, for example. And when you draw from a pool that's wider than the people who are just like me, you're more likely to get better outcomes. But you have got a superpower of finding those connections. We've talked about this before, how long it takes to get anywhere, because you will be chatting to whoever's in the vicinity and working out, how might we know each other? What have we got in common? This happened in a meeting that we had in a bookshop cafe just a couple of weeks ago.
Chatted to a lovely, lovely old lady with a pink hat because she had a lovely pink hat, a woolly, very sort of knitted, hand-knitted, beautiful pink hat. And I had a nice little chat with her, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
And I have bumped into her since, and whilst she was recognisable with her pink hat, so I definitely knew it was her, she did remember me as well.
What was your kindred thing? How did you know that she was?
I have no idea. I think I just looked for that thing where other people are looking for a bit of connection. Just keeping your eye out and then just finding some way to have a warm conversation. So I think that's my intent is I know we all feel more relaxed if we found something that we've got in common, even if it's the weather.
Yes, and that is great. Unless in a work environment, you're a manager who is giving opportunities to people who you recognise as being a bit like you over and over again, which means you're ignoring all the people that you don't really get or understand. They might not be given the chance. It's a self-perpetuating thing. So those people who say, well, I just want a good fit for the team. Or like we heard one time in one of our workshops, I just need the right man for the job. But that fitting in versus what might a misfit do? What might be different about this person that then could be a real asset to the team? If you just recognise there's a balance between I trust you because you're like me and I don't really know you, but I'm willing to give this a go and see what happens.
And that falls into, I think that bias doesn't just fall into do we like one another, but also falls into can you do the work? So that tendency when we think about looking at a team and saying, okay, I've got a new project coming up, who could I give it to? Well, the danger here is that you keep giving it to the same person every time. You don't work on building the capability of the team so that you have more options. So the bias is towards what's easy, what's straightforward, or what's low risk. But then you're diminishing other people's possibility to grow, to contribute. And I think that's where what we invite managers to do is to step back and say, like, look at what you need to run your team. What capability do you need? And then look at what you've got and then who can help who to build that performance.
How many people have we spoken to who've said, I do what I do because luckily years ago a manager took a chance on me. I didn't know, and I was really scared at the time. I was stretched further than I thought I could go, but actually I love doing this. And so now that's my thing. It does take a little bit of a leap of faith and time. And that's what a lot of people don't have. I haven't got time to train someone up. I need to give it to the person that I know and trust, my right-hand person. But that person sometimes ends up being overwhelmed with the amount of times they're given all the work. What about everyone else? Why can't they step up? So time, trust, those are things that fit with bias. Bias is about shortcut thinking, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's that Daniel Kahneman system 1, system 2 thinking, that thinking fast and slow, so that feeds into all the stuff we know about bias, which is we automatically think quickly, but we don't know what went into that thought process. We just know we've got the answer. So you have to show your workings, don't you?
Yeah.
A bit like being back at school. What made me come to that decision? How do I unpack and rewind on my thought process, which takes more energy?
Yes.
Here's some good news. You can burn more calories by thinking a little bit harder, slowing down your thinking. Always a winner.
How many calories exactly?
I'm not sure I know that answer.
But that could do with some of...
But that would make you be able to identify whether you've incorporated some bias in your thinking. So there's lots of different types, isn't there?
And the best place to go to is decision making. Why did I make that decision?
Yeah.
Often it's a bias has been used to help you make that decision. So marketers and salespeople will use bias because they know your brain is going to make the easiest route to making a decision. So if you're watching an advert and you see that something costs a certain amount and they're saying, but we're slashing the price and we're going to offer it at this, that's anchoring bias. The first number they gave you is the one you're now benchmarking against. Oh, it's gone from £1,000 to £500. Okay, sounds super. Actually, £500 might be how much if you heard that first. Anchoring bias, which ones are you aware of?
I don't know why I'm thinking this one this morning was hindsight bias. Just that sense of looking at a situation after it's happened and justifying it. So that means you haven't even really thought about what went into your decision. So you've probably got 2 biases going on there. Something was in the decision, and then in hindsight, oh yeah, well of course I made that decision because X, Y, Z.
Yeah, that was obvious that was going to happen.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't.
It can't have been then.
No, because no one knows which way things are going to go.
Well, apart from when I bring my crystal ball along, obviously.
Oh, well done.
Yes. Occasionally I bring that.
I really like thinking about halo and horns bias and when that's coming into play. And it's a very, very natural thing. Have you ever met anybody and you warm to them straight away and you think, oh, why is it? Why do I feel comfortable with them? Maybe they remind you of someone you know, a good friend or family member. And so you're attributing them with the qualities that person has. They've not earned that yet. You don't know what they're like. They just look or sound or act a bit like someone you already feel warmly towards. So you have that halo effect. And the flip side is, has anyone ever crossed you? And that's it. That's it.
Yes.
You can't ever see them the same way again. Your perspective, the lens through which you see them is, I can't be doing with you. I can't trust you. Well, that's not really fair either. Maybe it was a one-time thing that happened, and your lens probably needs challenging a little bit.
That's like the twisted thinking idea, isn't it? That you might be looking at a situation and saying it's all or nothing. They're either all a good person or they're not a good person, rather than, well, it's just a behavioural moment that might have affected you to say, right, I'm biased against this person. And talking of biased against this person, I think one of the things in a team is that you often bias against a team.
Yeah.
There's always that team that, oh, well, it would be them because, operations or, finance,
Yes.
as if that team somehow has definitely adopted a set of behaviours that means that they're going to pick on your team specifically.
Yeah.
Impressive if they can.
It is a really tricky one. I was talking to someone yesterday who was saying that their CEO had thanked everyone in a particular area for the hard work they'd done to get a particular project over the line. This team, the guy that I was talking to, hadn't got a mention. They feel very hard done by because they know the team that got thanked had caused a lot of problems for this team down the line. So that can go 2 ways, can't it? Is if you're recognising without thinking about the fact that actually some people are not okay with this group of people. They're not always brilliant. It's a really interesting one to just slow down. In our workshops, we get people to think about Who are the people you most like working with, a person or a team? Imagine you're about to go and meet with them. And just think about the words you would use to describe them. What's it going to be like if we've got to go and have a meeting with them immediately for an hour? And we see people just doing a little smile, writing down some things. And then we flip it to now think about a person or team you really would rather not work with. And we all have them. And so I think for our listeners and our viewers as well, that'd be an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Who are those people? Again, think about the words you use just internally to describe them. And the really fascinating thing is, by thinking about it, you are driving exactly the same emotions as if you're with them.
I know, it's the scary bit, isn't
it?
Your brain doesn't know that it's a movie.
Yes, you're thinking rather than in the situation. Yeah. And so how much of your feelings do you leak when you're with those people? Might they be aware that they're your favourite or least favourite people? And so how might that influence the experience of being with them?
Well, it does, doesn't it? Because you've got the mirror neurons. We're starting to go off on neuroscience now. But then if you are masking it but feeling it on the inside, I might be sensing it. So even though you're not telling me that you're annoyed with me, I can feel it. Oh, and then the dynamic, yes. So beware othering other teams and catching that, whether you're doing it if you're responsible for a team or whether you're in a team and that's happening, because no one team is 100% awful, difficult, painful, trying to make everybody else's lives
It can be fun labelling, can't it? And judging.
Yes. Yeah,
but it is getting in the way of good work.
Just thinking about somebody we used to work with who used to get an email from somebody that they had that perspective on, and every time the email landed on their inbox, they played the EastEnders music at the end, because they assumed every single email was going to be a drama.
And that brings us to the end of our podcast episode today. We could go on forever, I think, about bias. Which are the noodles that are most useful if you are thinking about bias, how not to do all or nothing thinking, how to check your perspective so that you can do better work and help people around you?
Perceptual positions.
What's it like being them?
Twisted thinking, so knowing which ones are your patterns of faulty, twisted thinking.
Yes.
She says twisting her head about.
Yeah. Without beating yourself up, but just going, oh, that is a thing I do. I wonder if I could catch that and do something different.
6 hats is really useful.
6 hats, again, for seeing different perspectives, trying out different lenses. Capability in teams, you mentioned earlier. Yeah. That's a really good one for working out where could I be giving different opportunities to people.
Yes.
Perceived weirdness index. So what might the benefit be of being slightly different to the majority? Instead of seeing it as I'm the odd one out, actually, where could you use that to your advantage if you wanted to?
Plenty there then.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to this topic. I feel like there's lots more.
It does feel like it needs a lot more space.
Thanks. Okay, till next time.
You can find a reminder of the concepts and noodles we've mentioned in this episode's blurb and get daily snippets on Instagram at noodle_space. Don't forget to subscribe, share and leave us a review. We love hearing your stories too on the chat at www.noodle.space.